And to wrap up an amazing couple of days here in Warsaw, we have Indi Young. Indi Young is an empathy researcher and writer. She helps organizations of any size explore perspectives, both internal and external, to bring insights that help clarify and reframe the way people make things and the way they work together. She's created mental model diagrams, was the first Rosenfeld media author, and was a founder of Adaptive Path. In this summary speech, Indi will use the 2 days we've spent together at UX Poland to investigate what is on conference participants' minds at work, and we'll look for patterns to create a slide deck of these findings and how the content of the conference has mapped to it. I've had the pleasure of interviewing and learning from Indi over the last 5 years. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome our final presenter at UX Poland, Miss Indi Young.
Thank you, Jeff. That's so sweet. Thank you, Jeff. I'm really pleased to be here, and I'm going to tell you guys what I learned about you. I know whenever somebody comes to visit me in San Francisco, it's really exciting to kind of see what they take photos of and what interests them and how they put these things together. And I really love putting stuff together, so I'm going to help you see through your own eyes. Okay, so this is the team that I had at my workshop on Wednesday of this week, and we were learning how to listen to people, how to understand what their reasoning is, how to get a little bit deeper than simply opinions and preferences and how things work and statements of facts and explanations and expectations and conjecture. We're not interested in that. We were more interested in what's driving them. What's your philosophy about that? How are you reacting to that? So I asked everybody to help me go out into the conference yesterday and listen to people and find out what's on your mind, what's your concern about your work. So we talked to a whole bunch of people. These are just a few who agreed to have their photos on the screen, so thank you. I wanted some eye candy. And we were able to hear lots of really interesting, fascinating stuff, like pretty quickly. Everybody was really willing to talk about what their concerns were about work, and so we collected a whole bunch of quotes. And we summarized these quotes, and then we started comparing them and coming up with different patterns. So we found several patterns. One of them here is like, look for fresh ideas and inspiring experiences. And this was not only having to do with work, but also having to do with your general life. One person loved salsa dancing because the emotion that he felt he could express and that the emotion of helping someone learn how to salsa dance. Another person was really excited about trying new foods, any kind of new foods, even organ meats. Anyway, so it's not only in your work, but also in your life. There's sort of this spirit of looking for a new experience and something fresh, also enjoying making a difference for people, aiming for bigger and better things. All of us are kind of disappointed with being stuck in a track and not being able to get out of it. Then it kind of turned to more of the negative concerns, which are, I've got a lot of anxiety about how well our product's going to do in the market. I slipped into the negative too early. There's also this pride and this happiness with our skill level and the confidence in what we can do for others and how we can help other people. And then back into the negatives, we've got a little bit of the whole decision maker angst. How do we convince people to understand us, to understand the data that we're bringing them, and to make some differences, some real differences that are going to make it more effective, not only for the people we're trying to support, but also for our business organizations. So one of the things is we're really tired of hearing from the decision makers just the answer no, even though you know the thing that you're suggesting is something that's going to make a difference to people. We're also frustrated that decision makers are not open to kind of a more innovative kind of thinking. This open-mindedness that we're interested in. And we're annoyed at how long the decision-making process takes, or even the production process. I heard one person has been trying for 4 years to get something to get out there. So they're also annoyed that decision-makers tend to stick to older philosophies, or what's seen as older philosophies, more conservative philosophies. Is there any way that we can gain some sort of power in the organization so that we can influence those decision makers more positively to go toward the design directions that we're interested in? And then kind of getting back into the positive area is like, I'm giving it all. I'm giving 100% of my energy to my career and to trying to make UX design better. There are a few more, but I'm going to stop with that because I think that point about making a difference for people is really important. That combines with that fresh and inspiring ideas kind of thing. And here in Poland, you have a long history of being curious about people. There were anthropologists back in the early and mid-1800s kind of capturing all of the folklore and the dances and traditions and stuff of the people of the country. There were people from Poland going into Siberia and doing studies. So this is common. This is not something brand new, this enjoyment of understanding people, this curiosity about people. Chopin, in fact, took a lot of the traditional Polish dance and turned it into his compositions early on, so that there was kind of this, I'm not going to just be this formal composer like everybody else in Europe, I'm going to include and embrace what we're doing here. And there's also this history in Poland of tolerance. About 200 years ago, or even longer ago, there was Articles of Warsaw Convention signed, and a lot of the religious, the people who were religiously persecuted would come to Poland to settle. So this is evident too. So here's the part where it's someone from outside coming in and taking a look, and the thing that struck me was all the monuments you have. The monuments here that remind people of what the people in the past have done for this area and done for the people in this area, and remembering the people who have perished throughout the years. So there's this strong touch that's constantly in your face about the people that are in our history and the people that are here currently. Also, the fresh and inspiring ideas, this concept of orienteering. I saw people jogging everywhere. They were doing this race. It's called orienteering Wednesday night. And this seems to be very popular. I think marathons are taking off. So tasting something new, trying it out, being successful, feeling good about it. And like Jeff was saying in the very beginning, it's all that inspiration. It's that inspiration of humanity, of being kind of embracing your fellow beings and opening yourself up to new experiences and absolutely enjoying that and making that your life work. So I think that was a really lovely thing. However, everybody's up against this. It seems like everybody's got a decision maker in their life somewhere who's told them, no, you can't do that. Maybe I think it's too much change at once. Maybe I think that it's too much time. It's going to take time out of what we really need to get done. We're not paying you to do that sort of thing. You're more supposed to be getting your work done. And you'll see this a lot with decision makers around the world because they're faced with this very real risk. How am I going to make sure that this organization is successful? How am I going to make sure that in another year and another 5 years, we're all still going to be around, maybe even bigger, and we're going to be able to keep supporting people because it's very important to me to keep supporting people, but the most important thing is to keep my organization around to be able to do that. And so their focus is there. Their focus is not on the end customer, as it should be. So some of the things that I saw in Warsaw, this river mermaid who's kind of defending the city, actually shows up on all of these little posts that you see around the city. Same image on every single little post along the sidewalks, protecting you from the cars and the traffic, protecting you from them coming in and accidentally hitting you as you're walking by, right? But you could also think of it as a barrier, and you've got your management, your decision makers over there on the green grass where it feels safe. and it's worrisome to go outside of those barriers. And that's what you're looking at. You're somehow trying to, it looks to them, it looks like you're standing outside in the road going, oh, come on out, come on out. There's no buses, no one's gonna run you over, So they're like, no way. Anyway, you also heard Alison talk a little bit about how managers who are a little closer to the designers tend to do the swoop and poop. It's like, I have the ideas and I'm going to come in and lay them down on top of you and you get to do something with them. And also we heard from these two, that whole zombies, the managers are zombies who eat your brains out. Yes, remember this? So anyways, there's this attitude that management is not working well with us, or the relationship isn't necessarily as strong as it could be. And what we want to do is try to strengthen it. Earlier, Matt was talking about the hippo, the highest paid individual in the room, having the everybody's going to pay attention to his decisions. And right now, what we are faced with is, well, how are we going to gain power? How are we going to be able to stand up to these people and say, hey, wait, even though you say that, I have some information here that's going to make a difference. How can I battle you? This is a fight. It's us versus them. How am I going to get power? How am I going to gain this? Maybe I need a seat at the table. You hear that phrase over and over again. You hear that around the world. We need a seat at the table. And the implication is that that seat is going to give you the power to influence them, that seat is going to make them listen to you naturally. I don't know if that's true. So I was talking a little bit about us versus them with Konstantin and with Andrea last night. And Konstantin was talking about this guy, Harald Welser, who's done a lot of research about what that syndrome is, us versus them. I mean, it's a very common, very human thing. This is what we're excited about when we go to a hockey game or a football game. It's like our team versus you guys, right? But anyway, Harold has come up with this sort of way of thinking of it, is that basically them only comes into being when you think you're being threatened, when somebody poses a threat. And in our case, our managers are threatening our really successful, very creative, forward-thinking ideas that are going to support people better. So they're a threat. And so in Harald's world, you start assigning violence. I don't know if we've got violence with our managers, but we certainly start to dehumanize them. We certainly, the whole seagull thing. But anyway, we do this sort of thing. Now, one of the other things that Harald talked about is this idea of when you're in this kind of an environment, quiet heroes arise. Quiet heroes are the people who are willing to take risks and do something differently than what the status quo is or than what they're told. They're willing to go a little extra and put in some extra effort, maybe work nights, maybe work weekends, maybe actually spend extra time working on relationships. And we heard a lot about relationships today. Another thing, yesterday actually, when one of the things that we heard about also in terms of being a quiet hero, here's an opportunity for us, which is accessibility. There were a bunch of talks about accessibility, mentions about universal design, and being able to make different solutions for people that may have different environments and different abilities than you do, not only physically, but also cognitively. So there was a lot of talk about dyslexia and maybe being able to support dyslexia. There's apparently a different font that you can use that would support dyslexics, and I think we were talking about that as well. So I actually wrote to some of the other Rosenfeld Media authors, and Whitney Cusenberry wrote back, and she says, really, the problem is that there's not just one solution you can plug in to whatever you're creating. it's got to be adjustable. You've got to think of the different environments that there could be, and maybe to use Konstantin's idea of the containers can look at what the variables are where they're being served and behave accordingly. So anyway, the idea of like sort of working despite the fact that the enemy is in the territory. So actually going ahead and doing this sort of thing, even though decision makers aren't necessarily supporting you. Somebody was really surprised about the rugby on the wheelchairs and getting the manager's support, and the tone in the room was that that's uncommon. You don't normally get your manager's support for something like that. So one of the other things that people were concerned about was that the decision makers tend to reject this open thinking, right? They just sort of outright think in an old style. Maybe it was something that was learned in school, that, you know, there's one right answer and this is how it is, and these people told us to do it this way, and so we're going to do it this way, and let's not think outside the box. And these were some of the comments, some of the quotes that we were getting, right? Like, they have, seems like totally different interests. It feels alien to us. It feels like, you know, there are the sirens. And the point of this talk was not to fear the sirens, right? It was to embrace the sirens and get to know them. The point of this talk was to stop that swoop and poop management, to build relationships, right? To concentrate on that and spend some of your time, extra time, on those interactions. To be empathetic, which means to reach out and take time and effort to understand. So, for example, when you go into a room with your decision makers and you're presenting something or you're trying to tell them about something that you've done, you have a hidden agenda, and that is to persuade them to agree with you, right? So instead of doing that, my suggestion is don't go into the room with the idea of asking them to agree with you. Go into the room instead with the idea of understanding who they are and how they're thinking. And keep going into the room with that exact agenda until your relationship develops with them and trust is built. And then you can start talking to them about innovative thinking. That's how you turn that screw, being able to listen to people without an agenda. So being able to listen to some of those bankers, for example, who thrill on saving money and thrill on being able to account for things, that's a different way of thinking than what we do creatively, right? But it's a valid way of thinking. And I think that's something that is a part of what empathy is about, is acknowledging that, yeah, okay, I'm not going to judge the way you think. I'm not going to say that's wrong, that's old, we shouldn't do that anymore. It's still valid, it's still alive, it has its points. To understand it and to get back to the roots of it and the reasons why they think that way, you'll suddenly find things in common. So the whole idea is being able to understand people. And we do that naturally. We do that already. We had a talk about being able to understand the emotions of people and facial expressions in the work that Mr. Ekman has done with facial expressions universally. And then these guys are creating an application where it's easier to capture this stuff when you're doing user research. So we're used to doing this. We are, this is the think, make, check typical cycle that you're going through. Brainstorming, we talked about too. That happens during the thinking, right? Do you remember this whole warm up your brain? Do you remember our little, what color is this? I thought that was so much fun. So I think that's an important thing for warming up your thinking. But it's also important to realize that all of this cycle is done around an idea. We're trying to come up with a solution that's going to help somebody better. Okay? All of our research, all of our user research that we're doing is about an idea or something that we think might help people, right? Now, there's also something that we could do with people themselves as opposed to the idea. So to drop that idea completely and do something on the side that understands people. Now, this works for our solutions, for our think, make, check thing, but it also works for working with managers, right? Same thing. Drop what you're trying to do, don't have a hidden agenda, and try to do some research with people, although I was thinking maybe we should call it pre-search, because research is so overloaded, and we already know, kind of usability testing, card sorting, all of this sort of stuff goes along with it. And it's a part of that check section, right? Check to make sure this idea that I have is gonna work. And you can check it all sorts of iterative ways, but it's not that pre-search stuff. It's not that let's look at people without an idea. Just to understand how they're thinking and recognize that the way they're thinking is valid and not judge it and try to go back in the roots of it and see what we have in common with them. This also works if you are a manager as well. Allison was talking about this as well. It's all about your relationship with the people that you're working with. And as a manager, if you're a good manager, you're interested in the creativity and humanity of the people on your team. If they lose their creativity, it's as if they're not on your team anymore because they can't do their work anymore. And so you want to encourage that kind of creativity. Listen to them, find out how well they're doing, maybe take some notes and then listen to them again iteratively and see how they're growing and see if you're doing a good job helping them grow, right? So, quiet heroes are the people who act in spite of authority. And they're the people who forge what they see and they hear into new configurations despite what's around them, new approaches. So maybe you can take some of the stuff that you learned here and create something new that's unique to you in your organization, make some differences, and try really hard to yourself be a rebel. Don't do it the way everybody says to do it. If you think you have a better idea, try it out. You may have to do it during lunch. You may have to do it during the evening. You may have to do it after work. But it's really important to do. So I want to thank you guys very much for inviting me here. I hope that this summary has given you a good little retaste of everything that you heard and maybe forged it into something whole for you that you can actually take home and work with next week and the week after and the month after and the month after that and grow it a little bit. So thank you. You all get to go.